We have learned that our first characteristic of tone, pitch, consists of both specific tones named from A through G in combination with various registers identified by their distances from middle C. Musicians use distinctive symbols for such identifications called the staff and the clef. The staff, or staves when plural, are efficient enough, but sometimes, in order to reach higher tones in the registers, above the treble clef or lower tones in registers beneath the bass clef, we need to make additions to the staves using short lines called ledger lines. Here are some examples of ledger lines. As shown, ledger lines serve to extend the lines and spaces and the A through G sequence of tones both above and below the main staff. There is significant overlap of the ledger lines which lie beneath the treble clef and above the bass clef. Notice that all the overlapping tones are identical to the ear whether they are positioned on the treble clef or the bass clef. The composer is free to add as many ledger lines as needed in order to achieve the specific tone and register desired. Let's examine and listen to an excerpt from Claude Debussy's Clair de Lune. Note the extensive use of ledger lines in both the treble and bass clefs. There is a third clef that consolidates the overlap of tones occurring between the treble and bass clefs. This is called the alto or C clef. You will be able to recognize this clef immediately, because although the symbol is supposed to represent a very ornate C, it actually looks like an ornate letter B. This highly decorated letter C seems to surround and emphasize the middle line of the staff. We observe that the middle line is named C. In fact, this line represents specifically middle C. One way to remember the names of the lines and spaces within this staff is to recognize that the names of the lines of the alto clef are simply a blending of the spaces of both the treble and bass clefs. Thus, from the bottom to the top, the letter names of the first four lines of the alto clef spell the word face, as do the spaces of the treble clef. And from the second line up, the lines of the alto clef give us the phrase, all cars eat gas, as do the spaces of the bass clef. The spaces of the alto clef, if we include the space just below the bottom line, gives us the phrase, every good boy does fine, as do the lines of the treble clef. The alto clef is always used by the violas. It is less frequently used by the bassoon, the English horn, and the trombone. Sometimes, ledger lines containing a large number of lines and spaces can be difficult to sight read. So the composer will use the articulation 8VA to tell a musician to play the written notes one octave higher. Both ledger lines and the 8VA tones will sound the same. We can also use a clef with the number 8 above it to mean play all tones one octave higher than written for longer passages playing very high pitches. By the same token, we can use the symbols 8VB to tell our musicians to play one octave lower than written, or the number 8 written below the clef to indicate the same thing in longer passages. This concludes our study of specific pitch part 2. In our next lesson, we will begin a discussion regarding our second characteristic of tone, duration.